Everyone needs their weekly intake of young, sweaty men playing with hard balls, and Kirikou satisfied that need with utmost skill. It accomplished this through its likable cast of characters, an engaging and fast-paced game of strategy, and a genuinely uplifting message. There's enough here to provide an engaging and entertaining experience for anyone. Although this is like my 5th time talking about Kirikou, and I feel as though I'm running out of things to say about it. So instead of my usual way of telling you my praises and criticism, I thought I'd instead show you how I believe Kirikou can be improved upon. Let's slam. Although Kirikou, very sadly, very sadly, is not that, whatever that was, this time around with its 3rd season, previous events finally affected Kirikou's reoccurring characters and gave some great character payoff, causing slight changes to most of the cast by just knowing Kirikou, effectively conveying the main themes of the work in an understated manner, which is something I did not expect from Kirikou, to be quite honest. Due to the previous character work of the first 2 seasons, this season was Kirikou at its best. Rolling Girl stuck true to its name and was always rolling, always busy and full of imaginative ideas, providing something new every episode full of stylistic flair and impressive charm. Every second of Rolling Girls was just brimming with style, sensation, and creative energy. Its creative gears were always in overdrive, and you can never guess what it'd do next. Seriously, I wouldn't have been surprised in the slightest if someone from the WWE popped up.
And his name is John Cena!
My time is now. You can't see me, my time is now. It's the franchise.
No, John Cena, stop that! Stop! Who would have thought John Cena hated anime? Oh yeah, sorry, where was I? Rolling Girls? Yeah, Rolling Girls may be an extravaganza of color, style, and action, liberally interspersed with some characterization and world building, but surprisingly, that's not enough to hold it all together. Rolling Girls struggles to piece together these components in a way that actually feels focused and impactful. It had too many wildly creative ideas for its own good, and the clustering of them all together caused Rolling Girls to become as aimless as an elephant strapped to an out-of-control jet engine. Although its central theme of identity stayed in focus most of the time, of how children make sense of themselves in a world that is in itself in a state of chaotic flux, due to it splitting into prefectures composed entirely of feudalistic and culturally isolated states that have begun to butt heads, Rolling Girls has a really cool setting, and yet those characters themselves are so bland as to make even that quest for finding your identity devoid of distinct identity in itself? That's an achievement in irony. But despite its issues, Rolling Girls is like seeing a constellation of fireworks as they meander into the air, exploding in a colorful harmony. And while fireworks always fade away, like Rolling Girls obviously did, they're always worth watching for the highlights. For that single moment where it all blows up and you sit there in awe. Which, yeah, that's how I describe Rolling Girls. A series of highlights that swirled into a single, disappointing, yet worthwhile road trip enraptured by its own kinetic energy and individuality. Now if only that had been enough to hold it all together. World War II era Japanese warships have never been so cute as they take on the guise of adorable teen girls. No guys, seriously guys, no, don't walk away, please. I mean, that's Kirikou in a nutshell. Please don't walk away. Zaya Media took on the unenviable task of turning a defiantly narrative, unfriendly browser game into a somehow coherent show, and sadly, they took the safe route of simply indulging in the already existing audience with an easily digestible narrative, which was to be expected. As an already existing fan of the game, it was extremely entertaining seeing my favorite characters animated, and the show still managed to work well as a competent slice of life, blended with some understated narrative set pieces. It also brought out a new waifu war and revealed everyone's shit taste in their best ship girl choices. Fire. The overall production was engaging, endearing, and highly recommendable for relaxed viewing, but it's definitely not everybody's thing. Well, it should be, because of the ridiculous sense of fun that grips you, and totally not because they're gay. Totally not because they're hardcore lesbians. Totally not because they're ships rubbing up against each other. No, that's not the reason at all. That's not it. That's not the reason at all. Anyways, Kirikou was an enjoyable place to spend time, and it was some well-constructed entertainment. And that was enough for me. Simply put, Goku Graffiti is about eating food. Okay, there's obviously a bit more to it than that, but it's a show that aspires to be something simple and ultimately shines due to that simplicity. Its comedy works so well within the context of its own mundanity, due to the contrast between that mundanity and the ludicrous levels of over-the-top ridiculousness of the characters' food consumption methods. And the comedy is just that, simple, direct, clever every now and then, and at times over the top. This comedy was fueled by sweet character-oriented humor by its grounded, likable characters. Its deliberate, slow pace displays its excellent grasp of how to cultivate a strong enough environment of pleasantness to be worth looking into for fans of dialed-back, relaxing atmospheres. And it accomplishes this while always underlying its heartwarming, simple, but effective, all things are better with friends message, which enriches the character dynamics of the endearing cast even further. Also, they're all gay. Yeah, it's Yuri.
We're not gay.
We are.
We're not.
We're gay anime girls and you're gonna like it.
I kinda broke the fourth wall there. Sorry about that. Goku Graffiti sits up there with the best of the slice-of-life genre. It was truly a filling meal. Marked by surprisingly thoughtful writing and world-building, Maria the Virgin Witch easily won the title of Sleeper Hit by virtue of its sheer competence for the winter 2015 season. Set against the backdrop of the 100 Years' War, Maria crafts its setting in an extremely compelling way, by feeding details of its history and present quietly and incidentally, and then uses that to reinforce our empathy in the characters that we're watching live in that setting. It was committed to depicting some of the unglamorous realities of the Dark Ages while using that world-building to feed into the character work. And then that character work feeds into the ideas and world validity and personal purpose. And all of that bleeds together in a handful of rich and sharply observed personal moments among the strong personalities of the cast. This perfect economy of characterization is carried by the understated dialogue and underlying storytelling that relies on the viewer's attention to detail. Like, take Maria's dialogue for example. It often works on multiple levels, reflecting on characters in one direction and on the show's competing ideas about sexuality and war in another. It was a really nice change of pace to actually see multiple characters competing with each other's values and desires. Every conversation reeked of tension. Maria's interrogation of its own themes through its characters composed their personal arcs into a single story that's central goal was to articulate their own personal ideals, while integrating them into an overarching narrative brilliantly. Maria was easily the most consistently good show of winter, and one of the few issues that I even had with it would be that it didn't try to be anything more than good. But competence is a skill in its own right. AnimeNEXT takes a clever spin on the ancestral heritage of heroes. The heroes are now the villains, and the once villains live as oppressed nobodies. Throw all of that into a dystopian world, now dominated by the now villainous Yattermen, and you've got AnimeNEXT. This is another serious-esque reboot of a kids series from the early 2000s, and it tackles this very unexplored hero-villain switch concept, and executes it into a really compelling story about a young girl trying to grasp notions of complex morality and the harshness of the world, while also being very down-to-earth. The contrast here between the children's television tropes and the bleak realism of this world is very powerful, and it makes full use of these tropes to highlight the underlying horror of its dystopian setting. The darker material reinforces the show's main point on heroism while being effectively counterbalanced by the more wacky stuff, like, included but not limited to, a giant robotic monkey that shoots bees, and even a giant forehead-flicking machine that's nonsensical beyond belief, and I deem it unnecessary to elaborate why this is a triumph of every measure, but triumphs always come with failures, right? And well, the show lacks tonal consistency, and that sabotages the second half, effectively losing that nice counterbalance that made the first half so noteworthy. If the second half hadn't spent so much time wallowing in its most uninteresting elements, AnimeNEXT could have been the best of winter, but it only executed itself halfway, squandering its chance to be something greater. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't absolutely love stumbling alongside AnimeNEXT's antics. Sakano is a show that is completely in love with itself and all of the trashy things that it comments on. It's obvious that it's trying to say something about cliches and eroge, but it constantly gets drowned out by its own indulgence in those cliches. But just being cliche doesn't inherently make something bad. Sakano knows that Kato stands out the most among the characters, and she serves as an interesting, direct contrast to them. It knows that characters that follow archetypes like Eruri need to have more than their shallow character traits, and that's where one of the coolest aspects of Sakano comes into play. Every single character is just so deeply in love with their respective artistic pursuits, and it feels completely genuine. That's when Sakano manages to be truly authentic, and that leads to some very personal character arcs relatable for any fellow creator. The rapid-fire style of dialogue-based humor filled with hidden meanings and actually sharp metatextual jokes made for a constant natural exchange of dialogue among the cast, which itself made for a really fun atmosphere. Sakano never rose very high above its awareness, but I just really adored each character, like, Uraha, please step on me, please, Michiro suplex me, Kato hold my fucking hand, Eriri beat me with your twin tails, wait, no way, no. Am I really reusing this joke? No, I didn't. Oh, well, that's just rude. I mean, it's true, but it's rude. Is a story about the normal and not so normal happenings in Ikebukuro. Ikebukuro and its denizens, of their interwoven storylines, of the hijinks they engage in, that is fundamentally Dororo. I'd say Dororo's main character is Ikebukuro itself, because in life, stories do not come to an end. There's never a clean break and there are always more storylines going on in the background, and things are always, not starting, not ending, but ongoing. The story of Dororo isn't told, it's presented, because it's simply a strain of coincidences of these characters meeting that intersects their own individual stories. It's just the happenings of the city, and it's an incredible way to convey the independent stories of the wide variety of personalities coming together in this single city. It managed to mesh all of these vignettes really well together as it weaved back and forth between the serious, the hilarious, and the ridiculous, by building in richness as you come to know the characters in the world. Initially, the comedy and quirky storytelling are bigger appeals, but over time, the really strong core relationships and the way the show elaborates on these distinctive relationships lends a great richness to the colorful tapestry of faces, personalities, and worldviews that inhabit the bustling city of Ikebukuro. Dororo came back like an old friend. We sat down, had a cup of coffee, and told each other our stories. This cour was set up for the future of the next two cour, and it's a future worth investing in. A story worth listening to over a cup of coffee. This cour threw in many interesting new set pieces and a lot of threads that collected together on the streets of Ikebukuro. It's setting itself up for something even bigger. Welcome back to Raw. Lives are their own individual entities. They cannot help but intertwine with those of others to create much fuller narratives, and all of these narratives come together at the small bar in Purgatory known as Quindecim. Death Parade's interest in exploring these kinds of narratives boded extremely well for the show overall. Not only did it gradually unveil details about the setting, not only did it not neglect the development of reoccurring characters, but it also cultivated a tonal atmosphere that allows these tales of comparative levity to coexist alongside the stories of the Arbiters. The overwhelming sentiment that human lives cannot be systemized sold to me just how thoroughly Death Parade is engaged with the systems and ideas it suggests. It attempts to give these human beings, lost to both the intentional unfairness of the Arbiter system and the episodic structure of the series, the weight their lives deserve. These characters and their lives were portrayed with genuine gravity and empathy, raising it above my early reservations of it to just probably be a series that strings along overly morbid games for the sake of entertainment. But Death Parade was not that, it was much more. Death Parade was surprisingly a deeply compassionate show that's complete understanding of life aided its perspective on death. Death Parade delivered on that parade in a different way than I expected, but it was a parade that won't leave my memory for years to come. Like, who could forget that shocking love story that they flawlessly blended in? Oh.
Burger-kun, no! Dame!
There's much more to touch on when it comes to Death Parade, but let's leave that for another time. Unless you want a 30-minute video. Which you don't, and I don't. Because after all, life's a party, death's a parade, and there's no time to waste before that parade arrives. In a single sentence, I will roughly describe Yurikuma. Lesbian bears from space. Yeah. Ikehara does it once again. Like with all of Ikehara's shows, metaphor isn't just an illustration of narrative here. Metaphor is narrative. Whether things are actually happening or not isn't very important. This is a story. Stories are allowed to do weird things in service of their higher purposes. Higher purposes like talking about human connection, or illustrating themes like gender identity, or maybe just some gay bears. No, sorry, got a phone call. Hello? Oh, Ikehara, Ikehara, this is perfect timing. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to let you go, Ikehara. Yeah, I'm doing something here. Don't listen to him, he's crazy. With it being done by him, Ikehara, who has pretty much a perfect grasp on composition, editing, and cinematography, every shot means something, and though it can get a little obtuse at times, it's still one intelligent piece of animation genius. With Yurikuma, Ikehara crafted yet another surreal contemporary fantasy with powerful allegorical undercurrents and a clever touch of absurdist humor. The interactions between the characters range between being absolutely ridiculous to overly understated. The dialogue tends to employ symbols that no watcher can overlook in their significances, and often crosses the line fine and, well, being silly. Normally, all of these things would clash to create an experience off-putting and probably dislikable. Yet, Yurikuma manages to avoid the pitfalls of overstatement and comes together as an engaging narrative. The pace that holds all of these separate elements together is the show's strong sense of visual and oral composition. The show itself still feels very cramped, but it's cramped because it's filled with way too many good things, way too many ideas, but just not enough time to elaborate on those good things. It feels as though Ikuhara was just bottled up in a room since Penguin Drum, and when he escaped, Yurikuma got overfilled with all of his abstract ideas. It starts out really weak, but becomes consistently more cohesive as it builds towards the end. It's not a perfect show, but it is incredibly rich due to Ikuhara's impeccable direction, surreal storytelling, absurd humor, and Yukari Hashimoto's dreamlike musical score blending together so well that they forge enough of an artistic identity to cover the weaker bases. I adored Yurikuma, I loved it even, and I never backed down on love. Oh, that was a lot of words, and if you enjoyed those words, please give the video a like or leave a comment, or if you want to see more of those dumb words that I write, you can follow me on Twitter at GlensTheMan. And if you do that, you can see me live tweeting what's going on at AnimeNEXT on June 12th. I'll be hanging out with some other anime YouTubers, and if you happen to be going and you see this handsome fellow right here, he goes by the name Glenn, feel free to say hi to him, and you and him can chat about anime girl lesbians or something normal, it's up to you. Alright, thanks for watching guys, and until next time, I'll catch you later.